I look like poopy. Welcome back, guys, and in this video I'm going to kill the Subaru. Rumble. And this is how I'm gonna do it. This is the evidence of the killing. I have got my Perrin equal length headers. This is gonna go on the Subaru, but because it's a Forester, it doesn't just bolt on. There's a few other things that we need to get. So I've got the headers. Now to put these on the 2004-2005 Forester before they change the oil pan, we need the new oil pan. This one's from a 2006 STI, and it's not just STI, it's basically any Subaru afterwards. They have this nice little cutout here, so this is the kind of oil pan we need. So besides that oil pan, we need the oil pickup, which is this one. This is just the regular one that came off an STI, a 2006 STI. You can get a few different ones there. You need the baffle. That's the part that goes above that, so it can spread all the loving oil, because of course the old one's not going to fit. So that needs to be changed. We've got a new dipstick and dipstick tube, but that's pretty self-explanatory because its location's going to change, so you've got to be able to change the dipstick, because it's got to go down lower now. We also have new gaskets, as you can see there. I've got both of those ready to go. Also, I've got a new oil cooler, which I have in here. I know you can just delete these, but I figured that out after I bought it. So I've got a 2004 WRX oil cooler, and then I also have the feed pipe. This feed pipe is the part that screws into the oil cooler. That goes into here. I guess they're like different lengths or different sizes, but I've got that one. And again, everything here is off a 2006 STI except for the oil cooler, which is off a 2004 WRX, because I guess that's what works. So now I get to put this all in. Oh, this is gonna take a long time. Alright, so before any of this starts, I have to drain the oil. So I've already got my car up on ramps here, and because we're taking off the oil pan, I mean obviously we got to change the oil. Alright, here we are into the car. I've got my drain right here. It's going to be a 17 mil, and as you can tell, I've been having just the tiniest amount of an oil leak right here up on my oil filter, and it's not my oil filter. It's actually a very common problem. It's the oil cooler. So I am changing out the oil cooler, which means I'm also changing out the oil cooler gasket, which is the main issue here. These fail a lot, so if you do have that issue, this video is kind of for you. So all of this is going to be coming out. I'm going to take off all the bolts. It's going to be a bit of a pain if you don't have a nice impact to get all of this out, but yeah, I wish you luck on how rusty it may be. Alright, so here's the first one. I've got mine might be a little bit different than yours just because I do have aftermarket stuff on here already, but this one is a 14 millimeter on both sides, and this one up here is a little bit harder to get to, so I'm going to come onto the fender well, and I'm going to take this out so I have access to put a wrench through to get it up in here. Okay, you can see up here in the engine bay, the O2 sensor, where we're at, is right here. It says blue plug. I'm gonna go ahead and take this one off because right now, I believe, I can't do that with one hand. Right now, this is going all the way down. You can see right down there into the header or the exhaust manifold, whatever you wanna call it. But this, I believe I'm gonna have to replace because it is so rusted on there. I got my O2 wrench on there and it's not working out too well. I might have better luck once it's actually off the car. So for now, I'm just gonna unplug it and drop the rest of that manifold. All right, so that O2 sensor is not coming off easy, so I'm just gonna unplug it, forget about it. Next up, we're gonna move on to these two bolts right here, right next to it, and these are going to be the same size. These are gonna be 14 millimeters. And once you get those two, you can creep around and get that one right up there. All right, so now that we have gotten, I believe, all the bolts off of here, you can kind of grab it and wiggle it around a little bit. You can see it move. I do believe all we have left is this side. I don't see anything up here, so I'm gonna attempt to take off this heat shield. There's a 12 millimeter there and one down here. I have a feeling like this is not going to play nicely, so let's see how that goes. All right, I managed to get those two out, and notice that there's another one right up there. An impact is your friend. So now, with 12 tons of dirt in my eyeballs, this thing just fell off. So I've got my impact 12 onto a long extension, which then goes up to a wobble, which then goes onto a smaller extension, which then goes onto my impact. Hey, I got it out, right? All right, now that I have the heat shield off, this is what it looks like. It's actually quite nice because it's been trapping in the elements, so, I mean, that don't look bad at all. Anyway, we've got three more again. We've got one there, and one right there. I'm guessing those are all 14 millimeters yet again, so once we get those three off, this whole thing should now come out. And that took way longer than I wanted it to because of rust. All right, there it is. Would have filmed it getting out, but I'm by myself and it fell on my chest. So there we go. I took the gaskets off both sides. I've got to make sure before I put this up, I do clean this whole surface. But that is what it looks like when everything comes out. All right, now it's time to get this oil pan out, which is the hardest part of this entire job, because you can see all the bolts are easily accessible, yada, 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 until you get up here. Then you've got this itty bitty tiny area that curves up, which makes it impossible to get to anything there. So as people have learned throughout years of servicing these, is to get this replaced, basically what you have to do is take off the motor mounts, which I don't exactly have access to anymore. You can see there's one right there, but I've got my sway bar in the way. And then over here on the left-hand side is the same thing. It's in the way. There's not really any room there. Most people don't have this issue because they don't have one of these in, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to get this out of the way or get in and take this nut off. You just have to back this nut out, and then your motor mounts on the bottom, you can lift the engine up a little bit so you can get underneath here to get on those three, I believe it's 3 bolts up at the top that you can't reach. So it's gonna be fun. All right, it looks like I've got just enough room. I've got myself a little 90-degree little swivel head on here with, what was it, 17? I forgot what the hell I said. But anyway, that just gets enough room under there where I just cracked it loose, and now I can slowly back this out until I can get it hand, which is not. And then it's just a little nut on the top. Boom. That solves that issue. All right, I was able to get both of them off on both sides, which is wonderful. I also, I kept those on, they're loose, but I also took these off just to give it some extra flex. I don't know if that's gonna help or not, but why not? So now comes the fun part where I put my jack underneath the car. Oh God, this is really hard. Okay, so I put the jack underneath the car, and what you're supposed to do is jack up the underside of the car, so basically the engine will start moving up so you can get under here. I do believe you start jacking up right here. So let's do that. All right, so this is what I've got. Got it jacked up. I got a nice little rubber puck under there so I don't damage anything. And then if we come right up here, you can see there's a bit more room. so I can at least get my hand and a socket up in there. So what I ended up going with is I've got a 1/4 inch extension with a wobble and a 10 mil at the end. Hopefully this is going to be enough. This is also a little adjustable guy too. Lots of adjustability to be able to come back up in here and get one out. I've already got the corner one out, so I need to get the other 2 and then the 3 over here at the corner. Now, go around and get all the easy ones. Subaru engineers, why'd you do this? Alrighty, now that all of the screws are out and the birds won't shut the hell up, now the oil pan can come out. But it's not as easy as just falling out, because this doesn't have a gasket on it. It's got the sealant, RTB or whatever the hell it's called. So you're gonna have to get something, a flathead screwdriver or a crowbar or some sort of prying mechanism to come up in here and unseal it. So then this thing can fall out. But of course, before that falls out, I almost forgot the dipstick. I've got to get this thing out. I should just be able to pull this out. Let me go up there, I'll take the screw off, and then they should pull out. All right, so in order to get the dipstick off, we've got a tiny little screw right up here. This is a 10 millimeter, if you can see it right there. Once we take that off, we can actually get the whole dipstick out. All right, so the dipstick was quite a bit harder than I thought it was gonna be. What I ended up having to do was put some grippies on there, grab onto that dude and smack it with a hammer until it came all the way out. I don't know why that was so hard to get out, but it was, and it's out. And now I can drop the pan. I had to put these in here because this already popped off. So now I can take these back out. This whole thing will drop down. All right, so I got it out. It was a bit of a squeeze trying to get it past this little bump over here, but there is a little indent. You can just barely get it out. But now the pickup is caught right there, so I can't drop this all the way because, of course, engineering. So, pretty sure all I gotta do is drop this. I'm guessing those are 2 10 millimeter bolts. I'm gonna drop my pickup, and then this whole thing should be able to come out. Oh, it looks like there's another one right here. All right, just got it out. There's just those 3 screws, 2 right here, and then the one over here. These screws are different, so these 2 are the same, and this one is different. You can see over here, the ones on the left were the 2, and this one is a little bit shorter, and it's got a washer on it, so remember that when you put everything back together. So, that's not the best looking thing in the world, but that's okay. Let's give this a little bit of a clean up in here. Looks like this gasket's still really good. That's great news. Yeah, everything else, I mean, it's still working, so that's a plus. Got to clean up the side so I can put the new gasket on there, and then I've got to take this baffle out because, well, I got a new one. Alrighty, got this cleaned up quite a bit. Now I need to get this old baffle off of here, so I'm just going to take off the rest of these 10 mils that I see are lying around here. I got one back in the corner, one right up in there, and of course these other ones. All right, just got the baffle off, and look at that. That is so cool. You get to see up inside there. I'm about to get dripped on, so I'm gonna move over here. Yeah, so that's out. Now I just need to put the other stuff in, and next up, we're gonna be working on the oil cooler. Okay, so let's be careful, because these hoses, as soon as you touch them, they break and they rupture, and then water goes everywhere. Antifreeze, the whole shebang. So remember that. So once you release those hose clips, one right here, one over there, careful because these things are brittle as hell. I might just replace those. But once those are out, then you can just grab this 24 mil socket, pop it loose. I already do have it loose on here. That's gonna come all the way out, and your oil cooler is out. Wind. Alrighty, had to run to the store and get some hose that didn't exactly fit, but I cut it to make it fit to replace this one and this one. So now that those are replaced, I can continue on with the oil cooler. So for this application, for this car, this piece needs to come off. So I need to take off all these 10 mil bolts and take this whole thing off. Okay, that has come off. There it is. You can see there's a little O-ring on there too. So next up, we've got a bolt right in here. Once we take this out, then more is going to come out. So this bolt up here, I believe is a 20, but let's find out. It's a 21. All right, and here is the piece that comes off. That's what we were looking at, and this is the other side. There is a gasket up here, so if you're having an oil leak, that's where that's coming from, if it is that high up. Ugh, oil. All right, after everything is off, this is what it's gonna look like. All your stuff that you took off is going to stay off, and you're gonna replace it with the oil cooler that hopefully you got already, because that would kind of suck. Everything I have listed down below in the description if you need to know which part number it is. But I've got the oil cooler and the oil charge feed pipe, the threaded thing that goes in the middle. I gotta put those on now. All right, so hopefully I'm doing this right. So we've got, this is our new threaded little feed pipe thingy. It's gonna go through here. Oh God, oh, I'm balancing things now. So we're going to thread this up through the top. Our new beautiful O-ring that came with this, which is very important. New O-ring, that's gonna go up there, and then once it's holding up, then we've got this threaded portion that we're gonna use for our new oil filter. Right? That sounds about right. All right, so I got everything kind of test fit in here because I have no idea how this is supposed to be oriented before I tighten it in. So I put the headers in place. I also put the oil pan down there. That doesn't really do anything except for put this in the way. I believe everything passes over that. So that part's fine just because of this cutout for headers and whatnot. But I believe this is the way that it should be. The original hose is not just gonna fit on there because everything is so much further up than it was before. So looks like I'm gonna need to cut my hose that I just bought and cut. I'm gonna need to cut that so it fits in here a little bit, well, at all. Just pop that in so it can fit up in here. And everyone just has to ruin my videos with their cars. I hate being in a parking lot, but whatever. All right, so this is what I ended up going with. I had to cut, of course, both of the, actually I only had to cut that one down. This one, I just trimmed a tiny bit off the end, but it fit. So this one you definitely have to trim. This one I only did a tiny bit and boom, it fits. All right, now time to finally move on. It's only been like 10 hours. All right, now that I have my oil cooler tightened down, as far as I can tell, this is about 39 foot-pounds to put this on. Not 100% sure. And next up, we're gonna put the baffle on. So, pretty simple. I got the baffle right here. Just line up the holes. They can only go one way. See how this bottom part dips down? That's for right here. If you can see up here, that's further up, and then this dips down, so we're gonna put it up just like this. Get all the holes in place, and put the screws in. All right, baffle is on, and remember, that screw hole right there, you don't touch. That one is going to be used for your oil pickup, because that's the little bracket that it holds onto, and it goes up in here. So leave that one alone. Next up, capitalism. Well, never mind. The new one uses this one instead of this one. So, fuck me. Well, damn, just like before, this opening right here, where the oil pickup goes, I've got to loosen everything up here so it fits in here first, and then up here. Why does no one tell you that? Like, it doesn't fit because, oh God, I'm really close. Because of this douchebag. Why? All right, that was quite difficult. It was actually very difficult. Putting the 2 bolts up here for your oil pickup first is the best way to do it. And then putting the other one that's over here up and then tightening them down while holding onto this is an absolute pain, but the best way to do it is to start with those two and then with that one that's up in here. And then once those are tightened up, you can push this up. Make sure you have your gasket or RTV, whatever you're using. And then once that's up, I'm starting to put bolts in, not tight, especially if you're using a gasket like I am, because you need to line up. I've got one right here. You need to make sure the hole is lined up with the other hole and it's going through the gasket. So once I get all of those up, then I'll start tightening them down. And once you've got all of those around all the edges like I do, then comes the extremely hard task of coming up in here and putting in the top ones that we had to take out. This is actually harder than taking them out because you have to put them in blind. So you're gonna get your screw up like what I have here in my little 10 mil. I'm gonna put the screw in my 10 mil. I'm gonna put it up here and then come around the side because I don't have enough room to just come straight in. So yeah, try your best. All right, so once you get all of those around the top, they are gonna be torqued down to 5 foot-pounds all the way around. All right, and now that I have the oil pan in, I'm gonna put the dipstick in, and don't be stupid like me and buy an STI version. The STI version, the WRX version, or the Forester version, I should say, they're the exact same. This one is a little bit bent because I bent it to get it out, which I believe I'm gonna have to bend this one just slightly to get it through because I am not taking out half of my engine just to put a freaking dipstick in. So I'm gonna finagle it down in here like I did before, and it's just this curve. I straighten it out just slightly so it can go down in there without having me take out all of this, because you don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Unless you want to do that, then don't listen to me. All right, I'm about to get everything in place, get that final screw in there. The way to get this dipstick into place is you do have to bend it a little bit just to get down there. Once it gets into the oil pan and it's seated like this, it's just seated just inside that oil pan, then you can push down on here. What I did is I got some rag. You can use a rubber mallet, probably preferably, and then you tap it down with a hammer. That'll seat itself down there, and then you just kind of turn it to where it needs to be, pop the screw in, we're good. All right, it looks like I've got everything all done here, and we can finally get to the headers, which is the whole point behind this. But before we got the headers in, we had to make sure we got all the oil cooler stuff off and replaced with something that fits. It's low profile, our oil pan, the gasket, the baffle, the pickup, the dipstick. Even though, like I said, guys, don't change out the dipstick like I did. It's the same damn one. Maybe the dipstick itself, but not the tube. I still have to check the dipstick to see if it's longer or shorter. I'm guessing the actual dipstick itself is going to be longer because of this part right here. But all that is good. Of course, make sure you get yourself some new gaskets for everything that you take off. I've got those. Yeah, let's put some headers on. And would you take a look at that? The new one on the left, lined up by the O-ring, is actually shorter than the Forester. Huh. Well, like I said, the actual dipstick itself is different. The tube is not. So there's no need to change it, but you do need this. Now for you guys, it might be different, and maybe the headers are different for everyone, but for me, when I test fit the headers when I was doing all of the oil cooler stuff, it did not fit very well. The only way I could get it on was by coming up here on the right-hand side, just getting it started in the threaded area. So like just putting the hole onto here and then going on to the left side. It's a lot of work. You might need like a rubber mallet. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's just the used headers that I got, but they're not an exactly perfect fit onto these studs. So definitely keep that in mind. All right, just got everything tightened down up to your up pipe here and both off the engine. Beautiful. Everything's tightened down. And of course, Don't forget about your motor mounts. Once you drop everything down, those have got to go back in on both sides. I haven't even done that yet. I don't even need this up anymore since I got this bolted down. So that's got to come down. All right, so here is the old oil filter. I just put this in place just so I have something to keep that thread closed until I could get my new oil filter to replace this one. So I'm going to replace that one. And of course, cannot forget over here, if we look up, I still have not put on the new upstream O2 sensor because the old one that I have is just seized on there. I cannot get it off. It still works, but I can't get it off. So I had to buy a new one. And again, all this stuff I'm going to put down in the description below so you guys can take a look at it if you want to do this to yourself. So I'm going to thread that one in. I'm going to go back in through the side like I did before. Just that little access panel up here on the side. All right, brand new K&N oil filter installed. Next up, O2 sensor. All right, so I just got it tightened up on here. And like I said, I use this little access panel over here on the side to fish the wire through there and then also get my O2 wrench and get that tightened up. I just use an extension to come out here and then turn the wrench once it's on there. It's nice and snug on there. Now I need to fish this wire up through the top where you see daylight up there and get it plugged back in. You see we have that routed back up through. I've got it routed like that just to try to keep it as away from the engine as much as possible. I've got it routed right through here where it was before. And then the wind blows because it hates me so much. And then we're gonna plug this guy right back into where it plugged in before. Just not upside down. All right, so now I've got two fluids that I still need to put in. I still have to do my antifreeze and my oil. Once I'm done with that, this whole job is finally done. I know it takes a whole lot of time, but hopefully it'll be worth it. And I know no matter what I do, you are all going to complain, but I'm gonna tell you guys what I'm using anyway. I'm using SuperTech. This one is for Honda, Nissan, Kia, Hyundai, and Subaru. It says Subaru on it, so I'm gonna use Subaru. I know it's not the OEM. I know it's not the super expensive stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone has to complain on the internet, but this is the one I'm gonna use, and hey, it's blue. And don't forget about your reservoir tank. We're also gonna have to fill this one up before we start the car, so make sure you've got enough in this one so it's up to the full line. And we'll make sure it's nice and full once we get everything started with the car started. And of course, always make sure you go under the car where you just worked. So we just did the oil cooler. So I'm gonna check on here. I don't see any wetness. Well, more than before. I still got a little bit of dampness that I didn't clean up. But all these lines that we worked on, make sure there's no dripping, anything. You still got everything nice and tight and where it should be. I don't see any drips, any moisture. So that means we got a good tight seal on those before we start cranking up the car and popping in pressure in these guys. We don't want anything to leak on us down here. And you guys always know I use the absolute best. So Amazon Basics. It's actually very, very good oil, strangely enough, because it's Amazon. I've got the high mileage, full synthetic 5W20, which is the stuff that's supposed to come in here for the Subaru. And this one is, well, synthetic, full synthetic, which the car originally didn't come with. And it's probably ridiculously windy and you can't hear anything I'm saying. Okay, so I decided to switch over to the expansion tank up here because for some reason my funnel thing is not sealing properly on this one. So I'm gonna use this one up here. I've heard you can use either of these and they'll work. So I've got this one filled up, ready to start the car for the first time. And down there up full, so everything's where it should be. And let's start the car, squeeze the hoses so we can start getting these bubbles out of here. Actually, I'd probably start doing that beforehand. And then we'll start the car and it'll get the rest of those bubbles out. Alright, so the car sounds completely different, not even like a Subaru anymore. I'm checking in here, make sure I don't have any check engine lights for that O2 sensor I replaced, but everything looks and sounds like it is running perfectly fine. And of course up here I got to make sure there's no more bubbles. I've got to make sure, just like anytime you do a antifreeze change, you have to make sure you turn the heater on, you make sure it runs, it goes through a few heat cycles, make sure everything gets flowing through there, make sure you don't have any leaks underneath. And oh, I forgot to mention, you need 2 things of antifreeze. I went through a whole bottle, filled everything up, and then I need about half of that one to where I'm at right now. All right, we're out for the first drive. Nice sunny day, got the windows down, and it sounds so different. It does not sound like a Subaru anymore. It's really strange. So I'm going about 45, so if I step on it a little bit, you don't get that rumble anymore. You don't get that deep growl. I've got my external wastegate that goes off, but the rest of the car is actually much quieter. When you step on the gas, you don't really get that rumble, which is a little sad, but I mean, I do like that the car is quieter because I am going for a sleeper vehicle here. And I'll show you guys the sound of it when I take off. Nothing too aggressive. It is much quieter, which I kind of like, but at the same time, the Subaru, she's died. All right, guys, that is it. This took way longer than I thought it was going to, just because there was a lot of stuff involved compared to just throwing some headers on there and bolting them up and they're good to go. This one's a lot more involved if you do have like a WRX or a Forester like I do, where you have to change the oil pan and the pickup, and there's just so much more involvement than just slapping on some new header. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and of course, I've got merch, my sleeper Subaru. Pick it up, why not? It's fun, you're cool, at least I'm cool.